Now we're going to take a look at the count around the nation and how that's playing out. But I should say on the way through that in the seat of Fairfax in Queensland, there's a very strong chance that Clive Palmer could be about to enter the National Parliament, but we'll come to that shortly. With 38.4% of the vote counted around the nation, the two-party preferred terms are showing 46.6% of the vote for Labor nationally, 53.4% nationally for the Liberal National Coalition, which is a swing to the coalition of 3.4% across the nation. Of course, that's not uniform. And we're going to cross to Joe O'Brien to break those figures down and give you a better sense of what's happening around the nation. And of course, not Western Australia yet, because the polls have just closed there.
Well, thanks, Kerry. As you say, the extent of the swing against Labor has varied from state to state, but the clear thing is there is a significant swing against Labor going on right now. Let's take a look, first of all, at the seats we're allocating at this stage. This isn't every seat in the House, but seats where we think there is a clear result. Labor is at 50 seats, down 11 seats at this stage. That includes Deakin, Corangamite and Lindsay among those seats there. The Coalition sitting on 77, so that's the first time we've seen that figure above the 76 required for government, but obviously we heard earlier on tonight from Anthony Green that the Coalition was headed for victory, so a gain of 12 seats at the moment. Earlier on we were saying the Greens looked likely in Melbourne with Adam Banton there, but that's gone back to 0 at this stage. And the others at this stage, Andrew Wilkie is confirmed in Denison, and as Kerry just mentioned then, Clive Palmer is a possibility in that Queensland seat. So how does that look in terms of the primary vote across the country now? Labor sitting at 33.5, the Coalition up at 45.1, the Greens down at 8.9, and a pretty significant vote for the other parties at 12.4. How does that compare to what happened at the 2010 election? You can see that drop in the Labor vote of 4.4%, an increase in the Coalition of 1.4, the Greens down 2.9% at this stage, and the others at 5.8. So let's take a look at how that works on the floor of the Parliament. As we can see, the Labor benches here will light up in a moment at 50 seats at this stage. Labor is 50 confirmed seats, and you can see a few of the independents there down the back that we're factoring in at this stage. Across the other side of the House, we're saying the Coalition is at 77, above, as I mentioned for the first time tonight, that number required for forming government at 76. Let's take a look now at how this might translate at the end of the evening. So this is the ABC prediction at this stage of what could be the end result of election 2013. We're expecting the Labor Party will pick up 59 seats, the LNP 89, the Greens, as we said, that seat is in the balance at the moment. The computer is saying it is a green seat or not, but that will be determined by the end of the evening. And the others, as I mentioned, Andrew Wilkie and Clive Palmer, a possibility in the seat of Fairfax. Let's take a look now at a couple of the individual seats that the panel may not have had a chance to look at. Hotham, this is the seat of former Minister Simon Crean. That's looking like a Labor retain there with Claire O'Neill. A swing to the Coalition of 5.5%, but not enough to make that a Coalition seat. So it looks like Claire O'Neill is going to retain that seat for the Labor Party. Moving on now to the seat of Charlton. This is the seat formerly held by Minister Greg Combet. The swing there is 3.2%. That is not enough to make that a Coalition seat, so the Labor Party will retain that. Pat Conroy is the member for Charlton. And finally, the seat of Rankin. This is Craig Emerson's seat, the former Labor minister who's made a name for himself singing songs on the hamster wheel. Jim Chalmers looks like he is going to retain that seat for the Labor Party with 57.5% of the vote. That's it from me for now, but I'll be back with more summaries through the night. Back to you, Kerry.
Yep. And we're going to continue to analyse those figures in the broad by looking at the three states across the south, that is Victoria, Tasmania and South Australia. Anthony?
Yeah, no, first of all, I'll just compare the swings in the various states. Victoria, we're seeing a 4.5% swing. That's come down slightly, but that's the biggest swing we're seeing around the country. In South Australia, we're seeing a 5.7% swing, bigger, but there aren't many marginal Labor seats in South Australia, so 5.7% may not knock any seats over. But when we look at Tasmania, swing 7.6%, and that's where the real damage is being done to the Labor Party. So let me go, we'll have a look at some of these states. We'll come in and first look at Tasmania again, just do a quick wrap of Tasmania. In Bass, Jeff Lyons has been defeated by Paul Nikolic. Next door in Braddon, Sid Sidebottom has been defeated by Brett Whiteley. In Lyons, it looks like Dick Adams might have been defeated, joining Gil Duthie in 1975 as one of the only MPs to ever lose that electorate. So it looks like Dick Adams is a loss for the Labor Party. Julie Collins has been returned in Franklin. She's been easily re-elected. And then we look at Denison. Andrew Wilkie's got a 15.2% swing to him. Just look at the first preferences there. 38.7. So Labor's now in second place. Liberal preferences will elect Andrew Wilkie. We might come back to that in a bit during the night. But either way, I think Andrew Wilkie will win from that position. And it's certainly well up in his primary vote last time. Now, if we go back to our map and we want to have a quick look at Victoria. Now, I can show the seats, our map prediction. And what we're seeing here is in Indi, we've got we'll come back and have a look at these figures in a moment, where Sophie Mirabella is in a lot of trouble. Corangamite, we've definitely given away to the Liberal Party. We've also given away Deakin, which is Mike Simon's seat, and we've given away Latrobe, which is Laura Smith's seat, on 4.3%. So 3 seats have fallen, and last time I looked in Melbourne, the swing is 1.8% to Labor, so certainly not enough. The count in Melbourne is slow because there's 16 candidates, basically. So let's now go back and have a quick look at the overall figure in South Australia. We said the figure was... let's go in here. No, in here. Adelaide. No, I want Adelaide. There we go. Wakefield, the swing is 6.4%. Labor will hold on those numbers. Port Adelaide, 7%. Labor will hold on those numbers. Macon, 6%. Tony Zapier will hold that seat. Adelaide, well, I've got Sturt. Christopher Pine's got a swing to him. Adelaide, 5.8%. That's not enough to defeat Kate Ellis. And at this stage, Steve Georgianis is the one that's in trouble, because on those figures, he's going to lose that seat to the Liberal Party. That was the seat that was most at risk. The one other seat, which is of interest to watch, Amanda Rishworth, she will retain on those numbers. And Andrew Southcott's got a 6.9% swing to him, so he won't have a marginal seat.
Okay. Now, we'll talk a little more about South Australia in a moment, but there are 2 seats
I'm sorry.
of particular interest that we're going to look at the moment. One is the seat of Fairfax, based around the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. This is where Clive Palmer, the billionaire or not a billionaire, depending on who you talk to, who has poured a lot of money into this seat, and it looks like he might, the money might have paid off.
Apologies, Kerry, I wasn't paying attention to you there. Fairfax, Ted O'Brien, 38.5%. Clive Palmer's on 29. The Labor Party, 8. The Greens, 8. If those preferences flow strongly to Palmer, then he's got a chance of catching up and passing. As Arthur said earlier, there's a lot of pre-poll votes cast at this stage. Clive Palmer is ahead on my estimate of preferences, but that's certainly not a seat you could call at this stage. That'll be one we'll be watching for the pre-polls.
Well, it's one that has potentially is enormous interest in the makeup of the next Parliament, I would have thought.
Titanic interest.
Can we? Well, yes, Titanic,
Twice.
certainly larger than life interest. We've also got the seat of Indi in play, and this has been held by Sophie Mirabella for the Liberal Party since 2001. This is in northeast Victoria, on a margin of 9%, but with 36% of the vote counted, she's in trouble.
She's in trouble. It's not one we're going to call. Sophie Mirabella, 44.9. I think she can still win from that position. But if her primary vote falls any further, and we've got probably most of the larger booths to come, then Sophie Mirabella will be in trouble. At this stage, we've got her ahead. We're not calling that electorate. So at this stage, in Indi, Sophie Mirabella's ahead. So that's the prediction we make. If I can have the attention back to my touch screen for one moment, I've got the party totals in Queensland, which I think are worth looking at. The Labor Party's on 31%, which is down 3. The Liberal National vote is also down 3%. The Greens are down 4.6. Katters Australia's party's got 3.3, and Palmer United Party's got 11.6%. That's why the swing's wrong in Queensland. Clive Palmer is getting 12% of the vote. All the estimates of preferences which were done in the opinion polls were based on nothing like that for Clive Palmer, and clearly his preferences are flowing differently.
You're saying that the opinion polls have been systematically failing?
Opinion polls are always poor at picking up new parties. I mean, people will remember that in 1998 in Queensland, Pauline Hanson was polling 5 and 6% and got 23% 2 weeks later. Yeah. So these parties can surge at the end of a campaign because they're just not thought about seriously. But that's I think you will find that is the reason why the big swing that was expected in Queensland hasn't happened. The vote has gone from Labor, some of it has come from the coalition, off to Palmer's United Party, and then it drifts elsewhere as preferences.
And of course it does have implications for the Senate as well.
Yep.
So, Arthur, it's an interesting set of outcomes.
Look, in relation to Palmer, the word was he was spending a lot of money, particularly towards the end, and that he was attracting disaffected Labor voters. And our assumption, or at least my assumption, was that that would be a way station for those preferences to then come to the Liberals. Now, depending on what state you look at, I haven't looked at it in detail, but it's looking pretty unpredictable about where those preferences are going to go.
Yeah.
They could go all over the place. And that's a concern. It's more of an impact in the Senate, but it's also had an impact on Katter's vote. It's interesting how Katter has been unable to attract the disaffected Labor vote. It seems to have gone to Palmer.
But are you saying, is it as simple as saying that it's money that's spoken?
I think there's an element of that, because he, from a standing start, put a lot of people in the field, and there's a lot of money that's gone into advertising and the rest of it. He's also, to be fair to him, attracted a lot of free media attention as well in various ways.
Plus he got his employees to turn up and staff the booths.
But I'm not sure that that's a big factor, but I think money to some extent has spoken with him.
And what about Indi? Why is Sophie Mirabella in trouble? Her vote has declined. This is not the first time her vote has declined, is it?
Well, I think Labor and the National Party in particular have ganged up on her. In the case of the National Party, partly in retribution for the fact that we are running a candidate in Mallee, which is more of a National Party seat. So it's been like a perfect storm for Sophie in a sense.
With a good independent candidate.
With a good independent who has a bit of a sort of right-of-centre pedigree. And so a lot of factors are coming together. She's a shadow minister, so she's probably not been in a seat as much as some other local members would be. But she's a good local member, but I think all of this has probably come home to roost.
Just as Anthony has gone through that sweep through those states, it's clear that my sort of pessimism at the start of the night was a bit overweighted. Overdone. And clearly we've lost, but I think that our losses in terms of seats have now been contained to some extent by the variation in the state swing. So you have, for example, the 4 or 5% swing in Adelaide, but that's not enough to get you a clutch of Labor seats, because we did very well there last time. So, you know, one loss or one in doubt in South Australia. In Victoria, yes, the swing is bigger, but in Victoria we've only got 3 or 4 seats on the very cusp. So I think now, and we're doing better, much better in New South Wales than the disaster that was feared. So our loss of seats, I think, at this stage is going to be between 10 and 20. Now, the hallmark...
Well, the Australian this morning, I think, reported in its headline, at least, that it could be as high as 40 seats.
Well, but I think if you look at hallmarks of very heavy defeats for Labor governments, if you put 75 and 77 together, we lost over 30 seats. In 96, we lost 30 seats. Last time, in 2010, we lost 10. We're now going to lose, I think, you know, there'll be a number where it's evenly poised. We're going to lose between, I think, 10 and 20, so we're going to have closer to 60 than 50. So you've got a very good base now from which, you know, the future standard bearers of the party, whether it's Shorten, Burke, Bowen, Clare, Plibersek, etc., can actually try and get back, you know, much more quickly than people would have expected, you know, yesterday and the day before.
Well, congratulations for being able to find a positive note for Labor.
Other than the Dockers winning.
We're going to take a look at the seat of New England now, because the new member, Barnaby Joyce, is standing by for a chat. New England, of course, was the seat held as an independent very successfully by Tony Windsor since 2001. He's retired at this election. A lot of controversy around the seat. Barnaby Joyce has moved from the Senate in Queensland, and he is now the member. Anthony?
Put it in that run.
Anthony, can we look at New England?
Oh, yes, sorry. Getting very excited over here about a couple of other things. New England, one of the more expected results at this election, if it's fair enough for me to say. Barnaby Joyce romping home with 52.5%. An independent still finished second. The Country Labor candidate finishing third there. And if you look at the swing after preference, it'll show this is a two-party preferred swing. It's not the vote for Tony Windsor last time. But clearly that's a very strong victory for Barnaby Joyce, who's a new member for New England.
Barnaby Joyce now joins us from New England. Barnaby, I guess this looks like it's welcome to the lower house and welcome to New South Wales.
And Annabelle, I'm inviting you up to have dinner with me at my new residence.
In that case, I immediately accept. Now, I may as well get this out of the way up the top, Barnaby Joyce. You were fairly frank about the fact that you saw leadership ambitions in your future and that you couldn't contest the leadership from the Senate. You can from the House of Representatives. Well, here you are. How far off is it, do you think?
Annabelle, it's miles away. I've got no real interest in that. The only thing I've got interest in, Annabelle, is to get my office up and running for New England, get my file structure going so I can start looking after people. Annabelle, I'm so humbled by the respect that's been given to me by the people of New England and this great opportunity down here to come home, Annabelle, after so long away and to be accepted back into the House by the people who, had every reason to have a sense of doubt. I just find that incredible, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that the respect that's been given to me is respect that I continue to earn. I'll work extremely hard, and honest to goodness, I'm just so happy to be back home, to be back with my people. And I didn't win this seat, Annabelle. They won this seat. They won this seat. The Killer Canaries, Annabelle. The Killer Canaries.
Well, they are marvellous looking canaries tweeting way back there. Listen, Barnaby Joyce, you seem to have a hell of a party going on there this evening. You're also hosting, I think, Australia's most successful businesswoman, Gina Rinehart. That's a pretty high-level endorsement.
Well, Annabelle, as you know, I have friends at the top, I have friends at the bottom, I have friends everywhere in between. I'm proud of all people. And when you've got a mate, you stick by them. I've always been really suspect of this idea that people apparently are to be swept under the carpet or kept away. If I'm your friend, Annabelle, then you remain my friend and I will stick by you. And if other people are my friend, I stick by them. And that's the way I work, Annabelle, that's the way I roll.
Well, look, let's talk about what's going on elsewhere in the country, because you will have heard that there's quite a strong showing from the Palmers United Party, even the question that he might come home in the seat of Fairfax. How do you explain that?
What happens there is you have a protest vote that has taken votes away from the Labor Party. Obviously, Anthony Green will be better at this than I, but obviously the Labor Party comes in second. He picks up their preferences. I hope he doesn't get up. It'll be pandemonium. I don't think that Clive has given a good reason or rendition as to why he would be a good member of Parliament. Everything I say, I really wonder about. The Titanic rubbish, the T-Rex on the 7th green rubbish. I mean, I don't know. What is all that about? And if that ends up in Canberra, we've got some problems.
Right, could you tell me in your characteristically pithy way what you think the biggest thing that's gone wrong with the Labor Party over the course of this campaign is?
I'd need the wisdom of Solomon to come up with something with that pithy, but look, it's... How could they do it? Like, they had one Prime Minister and they kicked them out because the Australian didn't like that idea, and they went to the next election. They picked a new Prime Minister and they kicked them out. Their debt they came off the back of a commodities boom and their debt went through the roof, and everything was just a fiasco. Everything they touched just turned into this crazy soap opera. And I think the Australian people just got sick of it, and they wanted them out, and tonight out they go. But I don't. That's a temporary manifestation. I know how politics works. They will regroup. They are a great party. They will regroup, and they will see their way forward. So we should not suffer the sin of hubris. Enjoy the night. Tomorrow's another day. The job starts, and I'm sure the Labor Party keeps us to account. I don't know how they're going to work with Clive Palmer, though. Maybe he's part of their opposition.
Well, we have to move along to Barnaby. I believe that Anthony Green continues to burst with information, as is traditional at this time of night. But thank you to you and to your Killer Canaries for speaking to us tonight. I suspect you're going to have a long and happy night.
Goodbye from the land of the Killer Canaries.
Now, Stephen Smith has suggested just a few moments ago on the latest figures that it's looking more likely, he thinks, that Labor's going to lose somewhere between 10 and 20 seats. Well, Anthony Green and his computer are going to give us some further insights on that count, on the seats that have changed or are likely to change.
Yes, I just thought I'd run through the seats which are definitely changing party at this election, and we'll do it by state. So in South Australia at this stage, we're saying that Labor has definitely lost Hindmarsh. If we go back to our state map, Tasmania, what's happening in Tasmania? 3 seats down, Bass, Braddon, Lyons. The electorates always seem to fall in the same pattern in Tasmania. In Victoria, there's been a substantial swing. It's decreased as we got a preference count, and at this stage, it's only the 3 expected losses for Labor, Corangamite, Deakin and Latrobe, which are appearing on that side of the pendulum. New South Wales is a different case. We have Banks, Darryl Mellon's been defeated, a Liberal elected, David Coleman, for the first time since the seat was created in 1949. Lindsay has fallen to the Liberal Party. The swing in some of these seats not nearly as big as was being predicted in some of those automated polls. Lyne and New England have gone to the Nationals. Page has gone to the Nationals. Reid is a Liberal gain. Another seat I think has been in Labor hands since the 1920s, except for one term with Jack Lang. And Robertson is a Liberal gain. So that's where some of the damage has been done for Labor. So what about Queensland, where the disaster was going to happen at this election? If I can get Queensland to light up there and hit go, I get no data. There's nothing happening in Queensland. There's no seats changing hands in Queensland at this stage. Fairfax is in doubt for the Palmerston United Party, but the Labor Party hasn't lost any seats in Queensland at this stage. Kerry.
Okay, now we're going to, I think, keep looking at seats if we can. And, well, I'm being asked to speak to Joe Hockey's making an appearance somewhere, but I can't see. There he is. Are we going to be able to hear what he has to say? Because there's a lot of things I can tell you about Joe Hockey, but we've got a lot of seats to get through as well. Maybe at some point we'll hear what Joe Hockey is saying to his troops, but I think we can make an assumption that he's a fairly happy chappy just before he starts tackling his first budget. Okay, we're going to look at some seats that are in play in the Northern Territory and then Northern New South Wales. So we'll start with the seat of Solomon. And Anthony, can you take that?
Well, interesting. Natasha Griggs won this at the last election. Luke Gosling is the Labor candidate. At this stage, this is just the Darwin and Palmerston area. I've got booths from both Darwin and Palmerston. The CLP is 5.5% there. He had on first preferences. When we compare it booth by booth at this stage, we're seeing 50-50 in the seats in doubt. So that's a seat we'll have to come back to later. But certainly that's not the result. That's certainly not a big swing to the Labor, to the CLP. And the new government up there has done some unpopular decisions, and I presume that may be a part in why we're seeing that swing.
He's a very, very good candidate, particularly suited to that seat. I've been in Darwin on a number of occasions over the last couple of years, so he's done very well. He might just snatch that. But that was the one early in the night I said we should keep an eye on that. It might be a good news story for us. He's done very well, Luke.
Okay, now the seat of Kennedy, which Bob Katter has made famous. Oh, sorry, Lingiari, which is still in the Territory. Anthony, what have you got in Lingiari?
Well, this is the interesting seat because Warren Snowden has basically represented the Northern Territory for decades. And what's happened is that at the last Territory election, there were massive swings against Labor in all the outback seats in the Territory election. And there was also at the last federal election in Lingiari, and that's what we're seeing occurring here. We've got 11 out of 71 preference counted booths. When we look at the swing on a matched basis on this graphic, it's 7.1%. Now, this is a vast electorate, and you really would need to see, and the voting, much of it goes on in the remote communities. You would need to see that figure we'd want to see more figures on that. At this stage, we're saying Tina McFarlane has won that seat, but at this stage, we don't know.
Now, we're going to have to hold on the seat of Kennedy. We'll come back to that a little later, but I want to take a look at the seat of Page and the north coast, far north coast of New South Wales. This has been held by Janelle Saffin since 2007 for Labor on a margin of 4.2%. But with 70% of the vote counted, it would seem that that seat is now lost to Labor.
Yeah, this has been a safe gain for the National Party. This is a seat that has gone with government at every election since 1990, and that's what it looks like happening at this election. Kevin Hogan's on 46%, look after preferences. There's a swing of 6.6% going on in Page, and we've got 76 of 92 candidate preferred booths, and at this stage it looks like Janelle Saffin's been defeated by Kevin Hogan, who wins at his second attempt.
Okay, now the seat of Richmond, which adjoins Page in northern New South Wales. This was also considered vulnerable for Labor. Justine Elliott has held this seat since 2004, most recently on a margin of 7%, but with 50% of the vote counted, she may be back.
Well, this is still classed as a regional rural electorate by the Electoral Commission, but it's increasingly an urban electorate. It's an appendage of the Gold Coast, though it's a very different demographic of people who live there. Matthew Fraser, the National candidate, 35. Justin Elliott, 34. The Greens get 20%, so a big alternative community up there. 7.6 for Clive Palmer as well. And we got preference counts in 55 the Booths, and there's a 2.6% swing, not enough to defeat Justine Elliott, who will be re-elected for the Labor Party in Richmond.
Now, what was Rob Oakeshot's seat as an independent, the seat of Lyne on the north coast of New South Wales, he came in 2008 and he has retired at this election.
This is another one of those seats that seems to get classed as rural but is almost entirely urban these days, or large parts of it are. David Gillespie, at his second attempt, has easily won this seat with Rob Oakeshott retiring. And on these numbers, there'll be a big swing, a 2.1% swing on two-party preferred basis. But certainly Dr. David Gillespie is the new member there. The reason we're trying to look at Kennedy, and I'm not sure why we didn't get it, but what's happened is Bob Katter's vote has seriously collapsed in Kennedy. Is that Katter's vote is only 30% at this stage with 68 at 133 polling places. Now, admittedly, without a detailed look at where that's from, basically his vote has collapsed and has gone over to the National Party. He's on 30% first. In fact, I'll use the map. I'll bring him up on the map. That's what I've got the map for. If I bring up, I'll go to Queensland, Kennedy. Nolene Icahn, is the LNP candidate, is on 42%. Bob Katter's on 30%. The ALP is on 14.6%. And the change in vote that's occurred there is just dramatic between Bob Katter and the LNP. So there's been a serious change there. And just to look at the swing occurring, we still think Bob Katter will be re-elected, but there's been quite a dramatic swing to the LNP in Kennedy.
Okay, now for some more political analysis of what's happened tonight, we're going to cross to Tony Jones, who has retiring Minister Greg Combet with him, as well as the Coalition's Mitch Fifield.
Good to see you both, and Greg Combet, welcome. And let's actually start with this big picture analysis Stephen Smith is giving us, that the losses may not be as great as things unfold as was initially thought. He's thinking losses between 10 to 20 seats, maybe halfway between that, 15 seats. That would be a bit more like the Latham election in 2004, wouldn't it, Greg Combet?
Yes, well, you look at the national swing, it's a tad over 3% still, I think, at the moment on the AEC figures. So that's pretty consistent with the polling that was published nationally over the last couple of weeks in particular, but it's a quirky, a bit patchy outcome, and I think Stephen's quite right in his analysis. The outcome seats-wise doesn't look quite as bad for us as had been anticipated.
Mitch Fifield, what do you think?
Well, I think Australians have voted clearly and decisively for change tonight. I can understand that the Labor Party being extremely pessimistic coming into this evening, but it's still a very strong endorsement for Tony Abbott. We're seeing some good results in my state of Victoria, where we've traditionally been underdone. We're coming back there. There are...
Well, you're picking up seats which actually were really Liberal seats. In fact, I can remember sitting with you at the previous election, and you weren't exactly weeping in your beer, but you weren't too happy to lose some of those seats.
Well, that's right. You're never
particularly
happy.
The three which you've actually looked like you've won back.
That's right. Never happy to lose seats, but we've only got 12 out of 37 seats in Victoria. Labor had a historically high vote last election. There was the hometown girl factor with Julia Gillard. That's clearly not there now, and people have seen how her government operated and how Kevin Rudd has operated since he came back as Prime Minister. But there are some interesting things in Victoria happening.
Well, let's look at Indi, because Sophie Mirabella, one of the stars in the constellation of the Coalition, is certainly in for a very tough fight. It looks like it's going to go down to the wire, but may be beaten by an independent.
Well, it's a very tough contest at the moment. Sophie isn't home by any means, but something that's, I guess, frustrated me over the last few weeks is every time the independent Cathy McGowan has been written up, she's been referred to as Conservative independent Cathy McGowan.
What do you think? She's a green/pastoralist pastoralist / independent?
Well, just because you're a pastoralist, just because you might have some cattle, doesn't automatically make you a Conservative. But she is a left independent. The National Union of Workers have had material in the electorate with photographs of Cathy McGowan, with the Greens candidate and the Labor candidate, essentially saying this is your left team in Indi. So
is this a union conspiracy, Greg Combet, against Sophie Mirabella? You've sat on panels with her. I mean,
maybe there's some personality politics involved. We'll see how it goes.
But I think the people of Indi have been sold a pup with Cathy McGowan, and hopefully Sophie will prevail. But there's something else interesting in Victoria, the seat of Deakin, which traditionally has oscillated in a very narrow margin of about 1.5%, a 3.5% swing to us there. That's a very strong result for Michael Sukkar there. And some interesting numbers to look at in the seats of Isaacs and Bruce. We're behind, but 6.7% swing in Isaacs against Mark Dreyfus, 10% seat. So it's interesting. We mightn't win it, but it's in play. And the seat of Bruce, 5.8% swing. We need 7.7% swing to get there. But these are seats which should have been beyond the realms of contemplation. But we're going to make a pretty good stab at those.
Well, I think one of the things here, when you're looking at these results, that is worth understanding is that I think Labor's made a concerted effort in quite a lot of seats, which Labor currently has held in the last Parliament, and 1.1 million phone calls have been made. There's been a lot of door knocking, very strong local campaigning to ensure that we defend those seats very strongly, and I think that's turning up in the results here tonight.
Now, Mitch Fifield talked about the hometown girl phenomenon in Victoria last time. We see Queensland currently no change to any seats. Is that a hometown boy phenomenon? Has Kevin Rudd actually delivered more than you might have expected?
Well, it could be that. It could also be in combination with the fact that Campbell Newman's been on the nose in Queensland, and that we knew going into the election that the cuts he's made since coming into government have had a serious impact on many people, and that's turned politics up there quite significantly. But of course, Kevin Rudd being from Queensland, it'd have to be a factor in it too.
So, I mean, would you consider that, if that were the case, and if they contain, that is, the Labor Party contain the losses of seats somewhere in the middle between 10 and 20, around 15, for example, would you consider that to be something of a victory for Kevin Rudd?
I suppose we should put it in a little bit of perspective, Tony. I mean, any election loss is not a good thing for the Labor Party. So,
I'm just wondering, realistically, Labor was always looking at defeat, and they were one of the pieces of rationale for bringing back Kevin Rudd was to save some of the furniture. So the question is, has he or does he appear to have done that?
Well, who knows? It's very difficult to know how to judge that. Of course, that may be a factor in it. It may also be a factor that there's been very strong local campaigns run. We also don't know how things might have gone with Julia Gillard as Prime Minister, having an uninterrupted run over the last couple of years without the disunity in the Labor Party either. That's a pretty important consideration. And
that was a consideration that Peter Beattie puts down to Labor's loss. In fact, disunity over 6 years.
Well, I don't want to take away from Tony Abbott. I think he's been the dominant figure in Parliament in recent years. He's campaigned incredibly hard over a long period of time. I don't like what he's done. He's been an opportunist on many fronts as far as I'm concerned, and misrepresented issues. But you've got to say he's a pretty effective opposition leader, and he's run a good opportunist campaign, and you can't take that away from him. He's achieved a swing in the order of 3% nationally, and achieving the result that we're seeing this evening. But having said that, I think it's important, as Tanya was indicating before, that Labor has a very, very good look at itself. We cannot afford to have the sort of disunity that we've experienced over the last few years. You can't have two people in a political party vying for the leadership all the time, undermining going on, conniving with journalists and News Limited and all the rest to damage your own party, drive down its own vote, undermine your own leader, criticise colleagues in the press. You can't do that. And people in Australia will not
can we put this
tolerate it.
plainly, because it seems clear that you're talking about Kevin Rudd and his allies in the lead up into to the vote against Julia Gillard.
Well, there'll be more to say about this in days to come, I would think. But
Feel free to express yourself right now. You're on a roll.
No, I think we just need to make the point: political parties, can't engage in that sort of conduct and expect to succeed.
No, but can I just press you on the obvious point? Are you actually? I mean, it sounds like you're talking about Kevin Rudd's destabilisation of Julia Gillard. Can we just be as plain as that? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I think that's been pretty evident, hasn't it, for some period of time. But of course, others that have a view about other events that took place in June 2010. Whatever it is, and I'm not trying to be specific about it quite deliberately, the simple fact of the matter is that if we're going to represent the people that we traditionally have represented, achieve the sorts of reforms that we aspire to achieve and live up to Labor values, you can't have the disunity and destabilisation. And as Tanya Plibersek was saying earlier, that has got to be a critical takeout from this election for the Labor Party and everyone who supports it. And we've made some huge achievements, I think, for the community that have been overshadowed like that.
We'll come back to you because you're here with us for a while. So's Mitch. We'll speak to you both shortly.
Okay, with 52% of the vote counted across the nation, it's worth a look to see how that vote is playing out and how it breaks down. And in two-party preferred terms, and this number is shifting slightly as the night goes on. Labor now is up slightly to 47.2% of the two-party preferred vote. The coalition's vote has dropped back slightly to 52.8%, which is a swing just a little bit over 3%. To the coalition. And to make some better sense of that, it's slightly more micro, we're going to go to Joe O'Brien.
Thanks for that, Kerry. So Australia has a new coalition government. Stephen Smith confirmed that at the outset of our broadcast this evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, even before the vote count had started. What's been interesting over the last couple of hours is the extent of the Labor loss or the coalition gain. Labor is down 13 seats. These are seats that we're allocating definitely at this stage, that there is a clear result. Labor down 13 at this stage. The interesting thing with that is that at this stage we're saying no losses at all in Queensland, but a swag of seats in New South Wales. Not as big as a disaster as was expected in New South Wales, but those 3 seats lost in Victoria, Corangamite, Latrobe and Deakin, and also 3 of the seats in Tasmania. The Greens sitting at 1, that's varied through the night. It's been 0 and 1, so we're not sure of that seat of Melbourne with Adam Bandt at this stage. Andrew Wilkie is one of the others definitely up right now. So how's that looking in terms of the primary vote? Labor is sitting on 33.4, the coalition on 45.3. The Greens on 8.8 and others at 12.5. How does that compare with the 2010 election? We'll see that the Labor vote is down about 4.5% at this stage. The Coalition vote up 1.6. The Greens down 2.9 and the others up 5.9 at this stage. So how does that look then on the Coalition benches? As I mentioned before at the beginning, we're saying that the Coalition is at 78 seats now, so well over that, or just over that mark of 76, and we can see the Greens, Adam Bandt sitting there down the end. You might just be able to make him out. On the other side of the House, it's not so good for Labor at this stage, 52. And the 96 result was about the 50 mark. So with still several seats, dozens of seats still to be decided according to the ABC computer, it's looking like the ABC result, the ALP result at the end of the night will be better than that 96 result. So let's have a look at how it might turn out at the end of the night. This is our prediction. We're saying the ALP could probably end up with 59, the LNP on 87. The Greens' Adam Bandt should pick up his seat, and 3 others at this stage, including Andrew Wilkie. Now we're going to take a look at a few of the seats that the panel may not have had a chance to look at. First of all, Kingsford Smith. This is Peter Garrett's old seat in the south of Sydney. This was held with there's a swing to the Libs there of 1.8%. We're saying at this stage, obviously, that is an ALP retained, though. That's 61% of the vote counted. Matt Thistlethwaite should be the new member for Kingsford Smith. Now we're going to head down to Victoria and have a look at the two seats formerly held by Nicola Roxon and the Prime Minister Julia Gillard. So Gellibrand first off, 48% of the vote counted there. Tim Watts, the Labor candidate, should succeed Nicola Roxon, a swing to the coalition of 8.2%, but not enough to make that a coalition seat. So Tim Watts, the seat there. Now to the Prime Minister's seat of Lalor in Melbourne's West. The significant swing to the coalition once again there of 9.2%, but Joanne Ryan, the teacher brought in to replace Julia Gillard, will be the new member for Lalor. That's it from me for the moment. With summaries, I'll be back over the next couple of hours to keep you up to date, but for now it is back to Kerry in the election centre.
And to take a look at some other aspects of the trends that are happening around the country, Anthony Green is going to take us through the seats of Western Sydney, where a lot of action was expected. In fact, more action was expected than seems to have happened. We're also going to look at Queensland.
Right, well, first off, we'll look at Western Sydney there. You see this pattern, which is pretty normal in Sydney, that band of red running from Penrith through to the coast there. If I map in the seats which are changing, at this stage I've got Robertson on the Central Coast, Reid and Banks, which have fallen to the Liberals for the first time, and Lindsay. That's all that's changing at this stage. If I do the overall prediction, again, there's the only 3 seats there that change. But let's look at some of the swings there. David Bradbury's been defeated. He only held it by 1.1 and the swing's 2.8%, and he's been defeated. In Greenway, the other 1% seat, the swing is 3% to the Labor Party. So clearly the candidate factor there for Liberal Party in James Diaz has caused them a problem, and that swing has gone the other way. So Labor has held their most marginal seat in Western Sydney. However, Reid, 3.5%, that has fallen to the, at this stage, that's probably fallen to the Liberal Party. A lot more votes to be counted there, but that's that's probably another defeat. And Daryl Mellum, let me go to Daryl Mellum there. No, Daryl Mellum. Doesn't want to give me Daryl Mellum. Daryl Mellum, 3.6%. He's at this stage, we've got him down as defeated, and David Coleman would be the new Liberal member. Now, I'll do McMahon in a moment, in full, but first I'll have a look at what's going on in Queensland. And up in Queensland, what I'll do first is look at the state votes, which is this figure here. That's the national figure. Let's go to Queensland. What's significant in Queensland? 31% for Labor, 44% for the Liberal Nationals. So the Liberal National vote is down. The Green vote is well down in Queensland. Katter's Australian Party, that's up from Bob Katter's vote in his own seat overall, but 11.3% for Palmer's United Party, and that's a very significant trend. But if I have a look at I didn't want the chamber. I wanted the map, which means going here, and then I hit that. And there's Queensland. You see any changing seats? No changing seats in Queensland. And that's the key story we're seeing in Queensland tonight. I can come into Brisbane a bit closer, and you're seeing this Palmer United Party has still a chance of winning. That's Fairfax there. Fairfax. We think there's a big swing, and Alex Somley may have been succeeded by Clive Palmer, not Ted O'Brien. But all those other marginal seats, and I'll see if I can get... There we go. Lily? No, doesn't want to do Lily. I can't hold a Lily either. There we go. No, I can't bring Lily up. I've had this whole problem. If everyone said Wayne Swan wouldn't hold Lily, well, he seems to have, but I can't bring it up for you. So, over to you.
OK, well, we're going to take a look at the seat of McMahon also in the western suburbs of Sydney, because this is a seat held by the Labor Treasurer, Chris Bowen. Chris Bowen is one of the figures of Labor's future, and there was a lot of concern in Labor ranks that he too could lose his seat, even though he's on a margin of 7.8%. So with 60% of the vote counted, Anthony?
And what we're seeing in McMahon is that Chris Bowen up against Ray King. Chris Bowen leads on first preferences 49.9 to 41.1. You don't lose from that sort of position. We've got 33 of the 42 booths. We've got a preference count in 30 of those 42, and the swing is 3.6, which is only half of what was needed for the Liberal Party to gain that seat. So Chris Bowen has been re-elected in his seat of McMahon.
And we're joined now by Chris Bowen, coming to us from the seat of McMahon. Congratulations, firstly, Treasurer, on retaining your seat. How nervous were you?
Well, thanks, Annabelle. Well, it was always going to be tight. It was always going to be tough. We knew we had a fight on our hands. But I do want to say a big thank you, most of all, to the people of McMahon. It's a great honour, has been for 9 years, to represent the area I grew up in, and I'm bringing up a family in federal parliament, and the people of McMahon have reconfirmed that today. So my overwhelming message, my overwhelming feeling is to say to the people of my community, thank you, and I won't let you down.
But it's not a happy story all the way across New South Wales or indeed across the country for Labor, and you've lost several colleagues in New South Wales, Banks, Lindsay, Reid, Robertson, all gone, all up across Australia. It's a pretty pronounced defeat for the Rudd government. To what do you attribute that loss?
Well, firstly, let me say we've lost some very good MPs, as you say, David Bradbury, Deb O'Neill, Daryl Millam, John Murphy. They're very good people, very good MPs, and they've made a good contribution to Australia, and I know that they'll continue to do so in different capacities. We've also had some good results. So Michelle Rowland's looking very good in Greenway. That's a great result. Michelle's a champion of an MP and a really good voice for Western Sydney. Parramatta's looking very close. Julie Owens too is a great grassroots member. And Mike Kelly and Eden Monero, a future Cabinet Minister and a future Labor government. So there were people this morning writing that there'd be no Labor MPs left in Western Sydney by the end of the day. Don't write the Labor Party off lightly, Annabelle, is the message. Across the board, of course, it's a difficult night for the Labor Party, but compared to what we may have faced 6 or 12 months ago, it's a result which I think will stand us in good stead for the next 3 years and give us a base for the Labor Party to continue to be the voice for growth and opportunity that Australia needs.
So tonight is a vindication of the decision that the party took 9 weeks ago?
Well, I don't want to get into that tonight. I think what it is an indication from the Australian people that disunity is not accepted in political parties, and we need to bear that in mind for the next 3 years and beyond. I think it is not a recognition or in any way a marking down of our economic record, for example, the creation of 1 million jobs, the keeping of our AAA credit ratings in the most difficult of economic circumstances over the last 6 years. We need to build on our achievements in government over the last 6 years. We need a time of reflection and contemplation about what we could have done better and what we can do better going forward, and we need a commitment to unity for the next 3 years.
Thanks very much for joining us from the seat of McMahon, Chris Bowen.
Thanks, Annabelle. Thank you very much.
And we're now going to cross back to Tony Jones, who has Greg Combay with him, and also by satellite, Julie Bishop in Perth.
Julie Bishop, congratulations are in order, first of all.
Well, Tony, the polls in Western Australia only closed about 45 minutes ago, so we're still watching the results coming in from the eastern states. I think it's too early to know any results out of Western Australia, but given what's happening on the east coast, we're feeling pretty confident here in the west that we'll be able to retain all our seats.
Yeah, you're acknowledging, of course, that you've won government. This is the key thing, and it means you'll be Foreign Minister from today, really.
Tony, I'm focusing on what happens here in the west. I know we're 2 hours behind, but we haven't had any poll results here in Western Australia. I've been travelling around the country since Parliament rose, and I've been to about 60 different electorates in every state and territory, and so as the results come in from those different seats that I've visited, I'm absolutely overjoyed to see some of the results and concerned that others that we thought we might pick up have not turned out that way. But overall, whatever success we are able to gain in this election is due to Tony Abbott's dedication and determination and commitment to hold a government to account and to present a clear alternative of focused, united, competent government. And I believe that that's the message he's given the Australian people, and they've put their trust in us, and for that I'm very grateful.
Julie Bishop, it does look like it's a substantial win. There is no question about that, but it also doesn't appear to be the landslide that many expected against Labor, including, oddly enough, in Western Sydney, where Labor seems to have retained some of these key marginal seats that everyone thought would be swept aside. Are you a little disappointed alongside the happiness of victory?
No, not at all, Tony. In fact, we said on so many occasions that it would be tight, and we knew it would be tight. It's very unusual to change government in the first place. It's only happened 6 times since the Second World War, and also Labor had only been there for 6 years. I know it was a pretty chaotic, dysfunctional 6 years, but Australians normally give governments another term, and in this case, hopefully we'll be able to claim government after 6 years in opposition. So we always knew it was going to be tight, and Tony Abbott said from the moment the campaign was announced that we thought it would be a close-run race. He said it and he meant it. So perhaps others in the media or elsewhere were claiming a landslide. We didn't ever take any seat for granted, and we don't. It was always going to be vote by vote, seat by seat, state by state, and I think that's the way it's turning out tonight.
Can I ask you a new Foreign Minister question? You could probably, no doubt you will give a brief answer, but will the coalition, with you as a Foreign Minister, fall in behind any requests from President Barack Obama for support for action against Syria, that is military action against Syria for gassing its own people, a crime against humanity?
Tony, it would be presumptuous of me, A, to assume we have claimed government, because Tony Abbott has not yet done that. B, it would be presumptuous of me to assume that I'll be appointed Foreign Minister. What I can say to you is, in the event that the coalition wins government, in the event that I'm appointed the Foreign Minister, we will follow very closely the debate in the US Congress, the debate that will occur in the UN. Our natural inclination is to support our allies, but there must be a strategic purpose to any intervention, and there must be a full assessment and appreciation of the consequences of taking action, taking some sort of intervention. We know that the UN Security Council is split, not only amongst the permanent members but also the temporary members, and it is a very grave situation in Syria. We have to be assured that some sort of deterrent action will in fact have that effect. It's a very complex issue, as you well know, and
I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but the obvious question, is it complex, or is it just baddies versus baddies?
Well, that is a very complex foreign policy concept in itself. It's not some Manichaean worldview of good versus evil. It is a very complex situation of Sunni versus Shia, of different countries in the Middle East lining up against the Assad regime on one side and the opposition on the other. And amongst the opposition, there are a number of extremist and jihadist groups. Al-Nusra, an affiliate of Al-Qaeda in Syria, is fighting the Assad regime. So if it were as simple as good versus bad, maybe the answer would be clearer. But I don't think there are any good solutions when it comes to Syria. The conflict has been going on for 2 years. Thousands and thousands of people have already died. The introduction of chemical weapons has obviously made it much more complex. So we would be briefed, should we win government, we would be briefed, as we have been over the past few days, and then we would make a decision once we were fully informed of the facts.
And just very briefly and finally, we'll bring it back to the election in front of us, and obviously you've got your crowd of supporters behind you, but it's potentially possible you could actually lose some close colleagues, in particular Sophie Mirabella in Indi is actually facing a very tough fight. You know, she would have been in cabinet.
That's right. Sophie has been a shadow cabinet minister and she's done a fine job. I've been in touch with her over the last few days and I know she's faced a tough fight. And seats like Indi often are vulnerable to an independent conservative on our side of politics. That's what happens in these seats. But I know Sophie will fight to the very last moment. She's a great lady and a great friend of mine, and I will watch that one with a considerable deal of interest.
Very briefly, Deputy Leader, are you very close, do you think, to declaring victory, and are we close to seeing Tony Abbott out there explaining that he has won, that he will be the new Prime Minister?
Well, Tony Abbott and I have been texting each other throughout the day, and so I'll wait for a text from Tony to tell me what he's about to say and when, and at that moment then perhaps I'll be able to have a glass of champagne, just one.
Thank you, Julie Bishop. Greg Combet, just very briefly to you, I think we have to throw back in a moment, but these seats that Labor has retained in Western Sydney, a big surprise.
Oh, congratulations to Michelle Rowland, and Julie Owens is ahead in Parramatta, and that's a really tough seat too. So I'm really pleased to see those results. Both of them are tremendously effective local campaigners, and to come back to that, as I indicated before, Labor's had a campaign involving over 1.1 million phone calls to people in seats like that, to try and ensure that we get our message through and that people aren't relying upon the Daily Telegraph for information.
Yes, you're picking up on the Murdoch conspiracy theory, are you?
I don't see it as a conspiracy theory. They're quite overt about it.
OK, we'll leave you there and throw back to Kerry O'Brien. We'll come back to you in a little while. Back to Kerry O'Brien now in the main studio.
Thanks, Tony. And we might just, before we pull back a little, talk a little wider about the implications of this result. Stephen Smith, since Julie Bishop, we're just hearing from Julie Bishop, we've now had some count taking place in Western Australia. What's your sense of what we might expect from that state, your home state?
I've got a couple of figures in. 1,700 counted in Curtin and a 3% swing against Julie, and 1,100 counted in Brand and a less than a 2% swing in Brand. So
against Labor?
Against Labor. Against the Libs in Curtin, but against us in Brand. But my instinct has always been we'd hold on to the 3 seats that we currently hold in Perth, Freo, Melissa Park, Perth, Alana McTinn, and Brand, Gary Gray. Gary's was always going to be the toughest, but if you look at what's unfolded tonight, we're not doing as badly as we thought we would in terms of seats. Incumbency and good local campaigning clearly been a factor. So the initial returns from Brand are less than a 2% swing. Gary's got 3. I spoke to Gary. There is one thing we need to understand about Brand, is that the booth of Parmelia North, which has got 3,000 odd voters. Last time Gary got 2,000 and the Libs got 1,000, so it's a big Labor booth. During the day, a voter dropped his or her car keys into the ballot box, so the ballot box has been sealed and won't be counted. So when you look at when we see the figures coming for Brand, Gary's going to be down a big Labor booth. So just be warned of that.
You mean for the whole? For the whole of that booth?
Yeah, they won't count
that
it.
Vote is paralysed.
It's been quarantined. They won't count it. They'll count that.
Was that a strategic car key drop?
No, I think it can only be described as accidental, or a Liberal agent provocateur.
So they'll wait till
tomorrow or the next day and just make sure that it's all properly accounted for. But
okay, now coming back,
just simply on that, we'll hold the 3. In my view, we'll hold the 3 seats that we've got in the West.
So just the question I think that you might like to answer now is, has Labor been vindicated at one level at least that it was the right move to go from Julia Gillard to Kevin Rudd as leader?
Well,
in terms of damage control.
Well, I think there are a number of factors at play. I think clearly incumbency is counted where we've been defending seats. Secondly, it's also clearly been the case that the big on-the-ground campaign that we ran through Central Campaign, all of that has clearly helped. I think particularly in Queensland, the anti-Labor vote has been soaked up by Palmer United, but then come back, I think, to Labor on preferences. So, and I think underlying it all is whatever the community thought about us, and Greg Combay said it, I said it earlier, Arthur has said it, in the end disunity is death. So just put to one side the personality of it. You know, we've been marked down after 6 years because of disunity. We haven't been marked down for a policy or for the way we run the economy. It's essentially quite straightforward. We've been disunited, and that's always death in Australian politics. If you look at where Julia Gillard got us at the end of last year, Newspoll, a couple of occasions on Newspoll, we were back at 50-50, and it was 48-52 at the end of last year. I thought instinctively, with Julia as Prime Minister, that would probably be where we ended up at the end of a campaign, because she would be nothing other than absolutely focused on the task and would put the pressure on Tony. What we were hoping for was a 1993 repeat where the pressure would go on the opposition leader. In the event, it's more been on us than on Tony, who's, to his credit, has been very disciplined.
Now, we're going to come back to this discussion, but we've got Malcolm Turnbull standing by in his seat of Wentworth in Sydney's eastern suburbs. We're going to take a quick look at his seat first, the seat of Wentworth, to see how that's gone. Anthony, what's the count showing? 56% counted?
Well, it's a very safe Liberal electorate. Malcolm Turnbull got a huge swing to him last time and easily maintained that. Labor's on 20%, Malcolm Turnbull on 62, 15% with the Greens. After the distribution of preferences, that's a further 2.2% swing to the Liberal Party. And Malcolm Turnbull, who I think won by 2.5 at his first election in 2004, or about 5%, quite a small margin, is now up to 67%, which is quite a huge swing to him over a couple of elections.
And we're joined now by Malcolm Turnbull, coming to us from his seat of Wentworth with a further enriched margin. Congratulations, Mr. Turnbull.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's a bit of a
I was
bumpy...
enjoying that slide you had there.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Now, tell me, Malcolm Turnbull, there's some very weird stuff going on in Queensland tonight. A couple of seats in New South Wales that you might have expected to win but seem to be likely to be held by the Labor Party, seats like Greenway, Parramatta, possibly even McMahon. How do you read the result at this stage?
Well, Annabelle, it's really too early for me to read it. I've been here enjoying the company of my my friends and supporters in the Liberal Party here, and so we've been enjoying ourselves and celebrating the good results here in Wentworth. So I haven't been through all of the results in the way you have.
Well, let me be the first to tell you then that it looks like you've been returned to government.
Yes, no, I picked that one up, Annabelle. We're not completely cut off here in the eastern suburbs.
Can you tell us to what you attribute the defeat of Rudd Labor?
All right, well, I heard Stephen Smith saying earlier that disunity is death. I think that's been a big part of it. You know, if you can't govern yourselves, how can you govern the country? The depth of acrimony and animosity and hatred within the Labor Party is of an intensity that I've never seen anywhere, especially in politics before, and it was actually quite confronting, and I know you as a journalist have seen it close up too. So that disunity, I think, was really a key part of it, and of course a sense that there was policy on the run, that they couldn't manage anything, that one project after another fell into disarray, the sense that after the great idea and the press release they lost interest, there was no follow-through, and of course I fear that in the campaign, while Kevin Rudd was obviously more popular than Julia Gillard, he started doing all the things that made him unpopular in the first place. You know, all of these, thought bubbles. Obviously, in my part of Sydney, we were quite astounded to see that Garden Island was going to be moved to Brisbane in a pretty, 3 months after a lengthy federal government examination culminating in a defence white paper, it concluded that it wasn't cost effective to do so. And, it was basically, the problem was that, Kevin reincarnated was the same Kevin they'd had before. And I think that was a big part of the problem too.
Well, OK, you studied Kevin Rudd pretty intensely during the period for which you eyeballed him directly across the dispatch box. I guess you know him pretty well. What would you expect him to do now? I mean, it looks like he's been returned in his seat of Griffith. Would you expect him to bow out or plough on?
I think he'll stick around. I think he'll want to lead the Labor Party in opposition. I think he'll stick around for as long as he can.
And what's that going to mean for the ALP, you think?
Well, far be it from me to give the ALP political advice, but I think, if you're on a good thing, stick to it.
That sounds like a good rule to live by. Look, I won't keep you any longer from your lovely party.
Okay.
Malcolm Turnbull, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Annabelle. Thanks a lot.
Arthur, just looking at the outcome in Sydney, particularly, and I can remember in the last election, the Liberals put an enormous effort into Western Sydney, and Tony Abbott particularly, and he has spent so much time in Western Sydney this time round. I wonder what the implication is. One can't imagine what more you can do to attract votes in Western Sydney. I mean, how do you respond to the outcome that we're seeing as opposed to the outcome you had hoped for?
I think in relation to 2010, we didn't select a lot of candidates as early as we could have, and I think Tony still feels that more could have been done in that regard. This time around, candidates were selected relatively early in most seats. In fact, Greenway was one of the last to actually be selected. What's happened, I think, in Western Sydney is that in a couple of seats you've got strong local members, like in Parramatta and Greenway, who've prevailed even though national issues may have been going our way. Other seats like Lindsay have been more bellwether because they seem to have responded very strongly to national issues. Boat people is an example. I think the cost of living's been an issue out there. So it's been a very mixed picture, but where you've had hard-working people out there for a while, like in Reid, Craig Laundy has done well. Banks, David Coleman's done well. He's been out there for a while, and it's been hand-to-hand combat. I underestimated the extent to which some of those local Labor members would fight as hard as they have, I have to admit. And I thought the national messages would cut through even more than they appear to have in some of those seats.
Is the economic circumstance of the people of Western Sydney as bad as they seem to believe it is, in truth?
Look, I think
given the nature of the overall economy of Australia.
what's been happening in Western Sydney is that they feel that there's not enough infrastructure out there. They feel they have to travel too far to get to jobs. They want more jobs in their local areas. That's why you're seeing this pattern of the Western Sydney mayors, for example, wanting the second Sydney airport to be built because they see that as a driver for jobs.
Well, that's going to be a nice one for you, isn't it?
A nice dilemma, yes, but the point is that they want more jobs in the area. When I was out in Lindsay, it was coming through very strongly. What they're expecting us now, and this is why WestConnex was a big issue for us, they want more infrastructure out there. They feel that, particularly under state Labor, for 16 years, Bob Carr basically put up the full sign and didn't really provide the infrastructure that was needed, and that issue, funnily enough, was also seeping into things like the boat people issue and immigration issue, and their perceptions about the number of people, because about 40% of all migrants end up in Western Sydney. So there's been this perfect storm of issues, if you like, there.
Of course, by the time you come around for your next election, the New South Wales government will be in its second term. Labor's record and the extent to which state Labor was on the nose will have dissipated somewhat, so I would imagine these next 3 years the government's attention is going to be pretty heavily concentrated on on Sydney City.
You mean the new
issues?
federal government?
Yes, the new federal government.
It will be. The state Liberal government, though, by then will have delivered more of the stuff that it promised in its first term, so I think that should be going in our favour, both at state level and at federal level.
Yeah, so you will be being judged on outcomes by
Absolutely.
then. Okay, now we're going to continue our seat run and we're going to stay in New South Wales for the moment. We're going to look at the seat of Dobell on the New South Wales Central Coast. And this, of course, was the seat that Craig Thomson, the man with the checkered recent history, Craig Thomson, won the seat in 2007. He's out of the picture well and truly now. We've had a 5.5% swing to the Liberals.
Yes, so the seat's still in doubt. We haven't given the seat away. We've got a preference count in 2/3 of the polling places. Karen McNamara's well ahead. Nathan Bracken, the independent, was nominated in the seat. That may have actually complicated for the Liberal Party rather than helped. And certainly Craig Thomson was on 3.9% at the bottom of the list. It's 5.4%. The Liberal Party are ahead in that seat, but that's still in doubt. That's one that by the end of the night will probably be still in doubt, and the one we will be watching all those pre-polls and postals on.
Okay, still on the New South Wales Central Coast, the seat of Robertson, which is always, pretty much always a marginal seat. Held for Labor on 1% by Deborah O'Neill going into this election. We've now had 62% of the vote counted.
And Lucy Wicks is well ahead on first preferences, 42 to 35. Laurie McKenna, the mayor of Gosford, who was running on a joint ticket with Nathan Bracken next door in Dobell, this is turning into a 4.3% swing. This was only a 1% margin, so it was always harder to hold. Interesting. There was only one poll done in that area, and I don't think the swing. I think the swing in that poll was larger than that from memory.
A lot of pre-polls to come, so we're being a little bit cautious.
But I certainly think in that election, Lucy Wicks is certainly one. There's no doubt about that one.
Okay, now the seat of Greenway has been of some considerable interest tonight. Still in the western suburb, or into the western suburbs of Sydney, and this is it was won by Michelle Rowland for Labor at the last election on a margin of 0.9%. The swing has actually been to Labor.
The thing to say here is that this just proves that candidates matter, and Michelle Rowland has been, people say in the area, she's a hard-working local member, but James Diaz was a controversial candidate for the Liberal Party, clearly not the one that the Central Party wanted, but the one the local branches wanted. He's had his problems in the media campaign, and there we are. That's what you get, a 2.9% swing to the Labor Party. Michelle Rowland has been re-elected, and that's quite a different result from most surrounding electorates.
Okay, now the seat of Eden Monero. This is, the famous bellwether seat of Australia, but perhaps no more.
Bellwether no more, Kerry. Bellwether no more. People can talk about Lindsay now, which they talk about anyway, but...
I wouldn't talk about Lindsay as a bellwether seat with any confidence.
Well, so I can tell you this, that Eden Monero is going to be held by the Labor Party by, look at this, 60 of the 84 polling places. The swing's 3.4%, 50.8. Well, look, It'll probably be still worth following for a week or so, but at this stage, the Labor Party, we're predicting the Labor Party will hold the seat, but that will probably depend on all the pre-polls as well.
Mike Kelly's held that seat.
Okay, now I'm going to continue the seats. I'd like to go to Queensland now and do something of a wrap of what's happened in Queensland. This was going to be one of the critical states, and it has been a critical state, but not quite the way that had been anticipated. There is this Clive Palmer factor. But the first seat that we're going to look at is the seat of Moreton. This is in Brisbane's inner southern suburbs. Graham Perrott won this seat in 2007, held it at the last election on a margin of 1.1%. We've now got 62% counted.
And certainly Graham Perrott has done a remarkable job here. The last election he trailed by 7% and got home on the huge Green preference flow. This time he's only 2% behind on first preferences. The LNP vote is down 3% on first preferences. We're estimating there's a swing of only a swing to the Labor Party of 1.4%. So rather than Graham Perrott losing that seat, he's increased his majority at this stage with 37 of the 50 polling places counted. So that's certainly not the sort of result that was being indicated in a lot of the pre-election press. Nothing like that.
Okay, the seat of Lilly. This is Brisbane's northern suburbs. This, of course, is Wayne Swan's seat. He's held it since '98. People thought he was going to be in trouble, but he may have survived.
He's had no difficulty whatsoever. Maybe Clive Palmer should have run in this seat as he originally wanted to do. But Wayne Swan's leading on the first preferences. Rod McGarvey running at his second attempt. The Green vote is down substantially, as it is in most Queensland seats, but Clive Palmer there, 7%. So that's quite a remark, Clive Palmer's party. But the swing is only 1.2%, and our estimate is that Wayne Swan will retain Lilly. He's lived to fight another day in the new parliament.
Okay, the seat of Griffith. This, of course, is Kevin Rudd's own seat in the inner southern suburbs of Brisbane. His margin of 8.5% has effectively been halved.
Well, some polls seem to have got this right, some got it spectacularly wrong, but it's certainly the case that Bill Gladstone leads on first preferences there, but with 9% with Greens and some votes with other parties, we're factoring in that there's a 4.3% swing. It halves Kevin Rudd's majority, but Kevin Rudd is still returned as a member for Griffith.
Okay, the seat of Ford in the outer southern suburbs of Brisbane. This, of course, is the seat that Peter Beattie has contested. Bert Van Manem won the seat at the last election for the Coalition, and he contested it on a margin of 1.6%.
Again, here's significantly something we're seeing everywhere in Queensland. Clive Palmer's party's polled 12.8%. The Green vote's down 8%. Family First is down 4%. Clive Palmer, as well as taking a little bit off the LNP and off the Labor Party, has swept up all the vote for the other minor parties in quite a remarkable way. Now, after preferences, to get back to talking about Ford, Peter Beattie has got a small swing towards the LNP of 1.7%. So Peter Beattie's failed to be elected, and Bert Van Manen has been returned as the member for Ford.
Okay, now Petrie in the northern suburbs of Brisbane, a seat that may well change hands tonight. Yvette Darth won it for Labor in 2007, contested at this time on a margin of 2.5%. We've now had 75% of the vote counted.
Let's have a look here. We've got this is one which has slipped back to the LNP side of the ledger. Luke Howarth is 0.5% ahead. The Palmer's United Party got 10.5% there. So again, the significant minor party in Queensland politics. And that's turning into 50.1 for the LNP. So that's a seat which is too close to call. I think I've got slightly later figures in my computer, and the swing it's up to 50.4 for the LNP. But certainly that's too close to call at this stage.
Okay, Capricornia in central Queensland, spearheaded, I guess, by Rockhampton. And Kirsten Livermore is the retiring member. She's held the seat since '98 and was on a margin of 3.7%, with 75% of the vote again counted. There's a significant swing on it.
Now, I said earlier there were no seats that's changed hands in Queensland, but this is the second seat, which, while it hasn't changed hands, now has the LNP ahead as we've got more preference counts in. At this stage, quite a relatively low vote for the two major parties there, but it's translating into a 3.9% swing, and the LNP is on 50.2 to 49.8 for Labor. That one's too close to call, and we won't be calling a winner on that one. I suspect tonight we've got 66 of the 90 polling places, and there'll be a bit of bobbling around in that electorate. It's quite it's an electorate that's got hardcore mining towns and really strong agricultural districts, to get quite different booths in that electorate.
Okay, Northern Sunshine Coast, the seat that Clive Palmer has been contesting, the seat of Fairfax. The sitting LNP member, Alex Sommelier, has retired. He's held the seat since 1990. We've got 60% of the vote counted, and guess who's ahead?
Yes, Ted O'Brien's ahead on 39.9 to 28% for the Palmer's United Party, 18% there with Labor, 8% with the Greens. Now those preferences will flow to Clive Palmer. I've factored in, I think, about 70% of preferences to Clive Palmer, and that puts Clive Palmer ahead on 51.8. That is a complete estimate of mine. I can't vouch for that. It's going to be the accurate figure, but if everything Clive Palmer said, I bumped into him last week and he said, I'm getting preferences from everybody, and so that's a seat which he could win, but it will depend on, did Clive Palmer bother to campaign at the pre-poll voting centres? And minor parties and independents often fail with that, and also definitely they tend to fail with absent votes. So I think we'll be a bit more counting in Fairfax before Clive Palmer's in Parliament.
Okay.
I will say this about Clive Palmer's vote. The vote is 6% in Tasmania, which is nearly enough to get them, after preferences, a seat in the upper house. So there's some very strong vote for Clive Palmer in some of the other states as well.
Interesting. Now, for totally different reasons, we're going to switch to the seat of Adelaide. This is the inner city seat of Adelaide, held by Kate Ellis for Labor since 2004, with a margin of 7.5%. With 65% of the vote counted, it looks like she's kept the seat.
Yeah, and she's easily won this seat. She's ahead on the first preferences with a significant vote there for the Greens, as you can see. We know the polling places this information from its 50 of 65 preference count booths. And when we factor in where that information is from and the preferences, the swing's 4.9%. The margin was 7.5, so at this stage we're saying that Kate Ellis should retain that seat with 52.6% of the vote. So she will hold that seat. One thing I will say about the pre-poll vote, I'll let Annabelle do the interview.
Yeah, we do go straight to Kate Ellis now in the seat of Adelaide. Good evening, Kate Ellis. It looks like you've retained your seat, so congratulations.
Thank you very much, Annabelle. Great to be with you.
But it looks like a pretty clear defeat for your government tonight. Can you tell us why you think, what's the major reason for that defeat, do you think?
Well, obviously, it's been an incredibly hard, not just election campaign, but an incredibly hard 3 years. And I know that people have wanted us to focus on their lives and what we should be doing to improve their lives and not talking about ourselves. So I think there will be some lessons for the Labor Party out of this, but it is incredibly important that we use this opportunity to absolutely start rebuilding right now.
Simon Crean said earlier this week in an interview that Gillard plus Rudd was great for Labor, but that Labor couldn't survive Gillard versus Rudd. Julia Gillard's left Parliament. Do you think now's the right time for Kevin Rudd to do likewise?
Oh, look, that is certainly not my job to call. Kevin will decide what his future is, and what my focus is absolutely going to continue to be on is serving the very good people of Adelaide.
Speaking of the... I just want to ask you, while I've got your ear, and I hope I still do, Julia Gillard hasn't been mentioned very much this evening, but I'm interested in knowing what your view of what her legacy will be.
Oh, look, I think that Julia will be remembered as being a remarkable Prime Minister, remarkable in terms of policy achievements, remarkable in terms of real and lasting education reform, disability care. There are a range of achievements which I am incredibly proud of when Julia Gillard was Prime Minister, as well as when Kevin Rudd has been Prime Minister as well. I think what is so unfortunate is that if we're honest about it, we know that there was far less attention on those policy achievements because there was too much focus on ourselves and on our infighting. And I tell you right now, it is absolutely my intention to ensure that that stops and that me and my colleagues get on with the job that we are hopefully tonight elected to do, and that is serving the people of Australia, making sure that we have greater opportunities, more fairness and greater services for our local communities.
Well, how do you bring about change in that respect? Kate Ellis, you say that you're determined to bring about... You say that you're determined to bring about an environment in your party in which infighting is a thing of the past, but how do you actually achieve that result given every possible circumstance to stamp out division, government, a serious margin after 2007? You were already mired in infighting a couple of years in. So how do you stamp that out practically?
Look, Well, I think that tonight, obviously, we're seeing results coming in. In the coming days, we will be assessing those results, and there will be a whole lot of analysis on what brought us to this point. And I believe that we would be silly if we did not stop and learn the lessons that the Australian public are putting to us today. The Australian public are very clearly saying that they want a government that is focused on them. They're very clearly saying that they will not condone political parties who are focused too much on themselves, and the Australian public are saying that they want to see real results for their local communities, and that's what I'm looking forward to providing for the people of Adelaide. And please don't applaud the people behind me.
Do not applaud on every single mention of the word Adelaide. That would really help us. Now,
well, we are very proud of our city, though.
It's been a bit of a roller coaster this evening. There's some very unusual things happening in Queensland, but it looks like Labor's holding all of its seats there, which is not, I think, an outcome that was anticipated earlier in the evening. Is this in part a vindication of this argument that Kevin Rudd being dropped back into the leadership late in the campaign was a furniture-saving exercise, and apparently a successful one at that?
Look, Annabelle, I don't think anyone really knows the answer to that question. It is a hypothetical about a situation that did not occur under Julia. There will be a whole lot of analysis over the coming days, but my focus is not on the decisions that have been made in the past. My focus is on the future, and my focus is on absolutely working not just to represent this community, but to ensure that this country has a strong Labor Party and a strong Labor movement moving forward, and that's what we absolutely need right now.
Well, congratulations on holding your seat, Kate Ellis, and we're going to leave you now, but I'm going to leave you with one final word just to make your supporters go bananas. Adelaide, good night.
Adelaide, thanks.
We're now going to have a Tony Abbott-led government for the next 3 years. You advised and were very close to John Howard for a very long time, and he was Prime Minister for 12 years. We know that Tony Abbott has been heavily influenced by John Howard. What kind of Prime Minister are we going to see, and are we going to see a more expansive Tony Abbott, do you think, than we have seen as opposition leader?
I think his modus operandi will be to build a big tent. And what I mean by that, and you would have seen it from some of the statements he's made lately, is he's saying, I'm moving from being tribal leader, opposition leader, representing my party, to now, in effect, Prime Minister, leader of the nation. I have to adopt that style. He's made it very clear that that's where he wants to go. How's this going to manifest itself? I think in a couple of ways. The first is he's talked about having a very consultative style when it comes to major issues. That's not about avoiding decisions. That's about how you take people with you, give people ownership of change. I think that's going to be an important part of it. Having some stability around how things are done. One of the big issues I think this government has faced has been this perception that there have been too many backflips on policy. So he wants to create a sense of certainty around things. It's almost like going back to a level of normalcy, in inverted commas, if I can call it that. We've been on a roller coaster ride for a long time now, and he thinks the Australian people want majority government and they want some stability and certainty around the outcomes. He's been very disciplined himself, and he's tried to have a very disciplined, united team. He's made a virtue of having the same people effectively in the same jobs for a long time. So I think the message he's sending out is, I'm going to lower the temperature, I'm going to reach out to people who might be natural opponents. I think you'll actually see him engage with the union movement, for example. You know, there are people in the union movement he knows quite well.
That should be an interesting engagement.
I think it will be, but the point I'm making is he is wanting to create that big tent, as we call it.
Well, in opposition, he's been controlled, Tony, and there is a sense that he's needed help in being controlled, Tony, that it's been a very tightly run operation. So I would suggest that people don't really have much sense of what kind of leader he will actually be, what kind of Prime Minister he will actually be. Do you believe he's a natural leader, and what are the attributes of his leadership?
Look, I've seen him in private situations dealing with some of these colleagues who've been going through hard times. Maybe it's that time in the seminary, but there's actually a bit of him which is quite interested in pastoral care, in the way he gets on with people and looks after them. And if you look at his commitment around Indigenous issues, for example, where he's talking about the engagement with some major leaders and empowering communities and all the rest of it, he's very keen on the people on the margins of society. I think he sees economics as a means to an end, and the end is the better social outcomes, particularly for those on the margins. And I think he will make a lot of that in terms of recasting his image with the public.
And you think he has established himself well and truly and has a mandate inside the Liberal Party, inside the coalition, that those who we read from time to time are doubters about Tony Abbott's true Liberal credentials and that sort of reference to a kind of vague DLP thing, that he will command authority inside the Liberal Party?
The first thing leaders have to do is to win. He's done that. We've got there. He's got us there. He's got us there earlier than we might have hoped at the end of 2007. He almost got us there on the first try in 2010. He has enormous authority internally. He can build on that authority now by this victory. And I think the thing that the public will have to look out for now with Tony is that he will go around, as I said before, seeking to engage with those sections of the community who perhaps are not his natural allies.
I know that sometimes you find people in politics who find it fashionable to argue that this is the election we should have won, this is the election we should have lost, this was a good one to lose. But with hindsight now, looking at 2010, I wonder whether it wasn't a favour to Tony Abbott and the Liberal Party that the independents in the end went with Labor and Julia Gillard, because what has now happened is that he arrives in the Prime Ministership with far more authority than he would have with a minority government.
The great lesson out of those situations, and we saw this with Helen Clark in New Zealand when she refused to negotiate with New Zealand First and the others, and people said, well look, you're potentially throwing away government, but she stood her ground on principle, and in the end it was the same with Abbott. He was prepared to compromise to a degree, but not to the degree that was needed to get into government, and I think he would have needed to sell out his principles. He didn't, and in a sense that stood him in good stead for this election.
Stephen Smith, are you prepared to acknowledge that that those Australians who are sceptical about Tony Abbott, or in some cases even fearful, might be surprised by the Prime Minister who emerges?
Well, that will entirely be down to how now Tony conducts himself. I think Tony has to be very careful, and I have to pay him a big compliment. He has been very disciplined over an extended period of time, very disciplined. And the pressure that we needed to get on him during the campaign to try and get sort of a Tony Abbott moment or a Hewson moment, on the contrary, he put the pressure on us. But he's got to be very careful for the following reasons. The outcome of this election won't be too far away in terms of seats from the outcome of the 2004 election, the Mark Latham election, and we then won 3 years later. The last time the Liberal Party were in office at the first election, they won in 1996 by 30, we lost 30 seats, big majority. 1998, Kim Beazley had the single biggest swing to him in terms of seats and in terms of vote, and got 50% two-party preferred, almost got the election. So the Liberal Party will be chastened by that. We're in a comparable political position when we went from the 2004 victory, and the last time Labor was in opposition and we were in government, our first term was a difficult one. So Tony's going to have to be careful. It'll be interesting to see the composition of the Senate, to see how that as well circumscribes him. But one of his challenges and difficulties will be, he's been a very good small target, small ball, has played the gaming of cuts and what you're going to do and budgets, very well from a political point of view. But now he's got to work out how he's proposing to run the country, and at the same time he'll have members of the Liberal Party who will want to see an ideological approach. So he's got to be careful, he's got to be cautious, and within those constraints he'll have all of the usual difficulties, and it'll be interesting to see how he's then viewed internally by the Liberal Party but also externally by the community.
And while he's doing that, of course, the Labor Party is going to have to try and rediscover stability, which to my memory you haven't had for a very long time.
Well, absolutely.
Really, I mean, after the defeat of the Keating government, you've had, I won't do a quick count of leaders, but you've had quite a few.
Well, Kim on more than one occasion, Simon, Mark,
Kim,
Julia
Green,
and Kevin.
Kim again, Latham, etc. In other words.
But what we have to do now, we've got to put the personality politics of division behind us. Julia has left the Parliament. Kevin would be acting in his own interests and in our interests if he did exactly the same thing, to give the next generation, the Shortens, the Kate Ellises, the Bowens, the Burkes, the Tanya Pliberseks, the Mark Bucklers, to give that generation, the next generation, the chance chance to forge out on their own. So the smart thing for the party and the smart thing for Kevin, in my view, is not just to walk away from the leadership, but to walk away from the parliament, do what Julia has done, remove for all time the remnants of those political and leadership disputes and difficulties that we had from the moment, effectively, of the 1996 defeat.
Okay, well, we'll get some sense of that when we hear from Kevin Rudd shortly. In the meantime, we'll do our first run of seats from Western Australia, and we're going to start with the seat of Durack in the very far north of the state. Barry Haas won this seat in 2010 for the Liberals, but is retiring, and he held it with a 13.7% margin. We've got 22% of the vote counted. Anthony?
Yes, and what we're getting here, funny looking swing figure. Melissa Price is ahead. Now, this is a Liberal versus National contest. The Labor Party will be excluded. Labor's director, this is actually getting a preference count in this electorate as well. And we've got that in about a third of booths so far. And at this stage, it's indicating this will be a very close contest. It's the swing figure there is not particularly meaningful. What's important is it's 51.2 to 48.8, and that'll be a seat we'll be watching all night, all night, maybe next week with the counting. Melissa Price is currently leading, but that's where the Nationals have run a close contest.
Well, the key there, Kerry, is that both Labor and Palmer party preferences go to the Nationals over the Libs. That's the pressure.
Do they?
Sorry. Palmer goes to the Nationals. Ours go to the Libs.
Although, as we both know from the WA election,
they don't necessarily follow
the ticket.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Okay, the Wheatbelt seat of O'Connor. This was held by Tony Crook. He won it at the last election, a sort of independent Nat, but he's surprised by retiring at this election and left the Nats with a notional margin of 3.6%. We've had 10% counted there.
Yes, and we've got actually a comparison of booths in this figure in 7 of the 133. I mean, this is, I think it's got more booths than any other polling place in the country.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you because we've got Kevin Rudd making an appearance, I'm told, at the Gabba cricket ground, and there he is. So this is a tough moment for Kevin Rudd, and it's a moment of truth. He's had 1 or 2 of those in the past. We all know the story of Kevin Rudd by now. He won government and became Prime Minister, defeating the second most successful Prime Minister in Australian history in John Howard in 2007. He was regarded then as an extremely good campaigner, and it was one of the strengths that his supporters kept quoting internally in the Labor Party after Julia Gillard had replaced him and then struck problem in the polls herself after the 2010 election. We know that Julia Gillard was struggling with minority government for the 3 years, and there's been all sorts of talk about how Kevin Rudd was destabilising her through that process. Whether that's right or not, he has been Prime Minister again for 2 months. He's led his party to an election, and it's an election defeat. The question is, does he have any interest or any intention of staying on as Labor leader? Or will he indicate that the backbench is for him?
Oh, geez, I thought we'd lost. My fellow Australians, my fellow Queenslanders, and fellow members of the great Australian Labor Party. Today, we have fought the good fight as the great Australian Labor Party. Tonight is the time to unite as the great Australian nation. Because whatever our politics may be, we are all, first and foremost, Australian. And the things that unite us are more powerful than the things that divide us, which is why the world marvels at Australia. This country which can manage its political differences peacefully and conduct the most vigorous of debates peacefully and resolve our politics peacefully and with civility. That is why this country is such a great country. And that in this marvellous tapestry of modern Australia, the mosaic of our multicultural nation, that we fashion such unity out of diversity. Therein lies the great Australian miracle, which is why we are all proud to be Australian. A short time ago, I telephoned Tony Abbott to concede defeat at these national elections. As Prime Minister of Australia, I wish him well now in the high office of Prime Minister of this country. Theresa and I wish he, Margie and their family well in coping with the stresses and strains of high office that lie ahead. We know a little bit of what that is like. And Theresa and I look forward to greeting them at the Lodge early next week in the same gracious manner with which Mr and Mrs Howard welcomed us 6 years ago. I also wish his government well for the great and difficult challenges that now lie ahead for Australia. Now I want to speak to Labor people and Labor supporters everywhere across Australia. Geez, a couple more days we might have got there. I know that Labor hearts are heavy across the nation tonight. And as your Prime Minister and as your parliamentary leader of the Great Australian Labor Party, I accept responsibility. I gave it my all, but it was not enough for us to win. I'm proud that despite all the prophets of doom, that we have preserved our federal parliamentary Labor Party as a viable fighting force for the future. And I'm also proud of the fact that despite the pundits, we appear to have held every seat in Queensland. I saw Sky News just before saying we're all gone, including me. Anyway, I'm proud of the fact that we've held each of our seats in Queensland. I'm proud of the fact that every Cabinet Minister has been returned at this election. And I'm proud that practically all other members of our executive have been returned as well. But tonight, we have lost many fine Labor men and women from our parliament. And I would like to thank them personally for their courage and their unswerving commitment to our cause, to our party and to our nation. Just as I'd like to thank each and every one of you, the true believers of Australia, who have worked so hard this campaign for your unswerving commitment and to our cause and to our nation. For our party and for our movement, we have known defeat before. But I say this to you, throughout our 122-year history, we have always risen from defeat. To renew our party with fresh vigour and with new ideas for the future. And we'll do it again. Ben Chifley's light on the hill still burns bright across Australia. It is a flame that cannot be extinguished. And while there's still breath in Labor bodies, strength in Labor sinews and hope in Labor hearts, Ben Chifley's light on the hill will continue forever. So in the time of rebuilding that lies ahead, we must never lose sight of that clear and guiding light, for it remains the beacon of progressive politics for us all. It is what others have called the audacity of hope, or put more simply, our simple, audacious belief that we can make our community and our country and world a better place for all, not just for some, for all, not just for some. And a progressive view of politics that says that we can believe that we can make this community and nation and world of ours a better place than the one we inherited from our forebears. That's the progressive vision of the future. Once again tonight, I thank the good burghers of Griffith for their support. It would be un-prime ministerial of me to say, Bill Glasson, eat your heart out, so I won't. The good people of Griffith, the good people of Brisbane South Side, it is such a fantastic community, and I thank them for their support. It is a truly marvellous part of Australia, and I thank them for again returning me as their local member. For the rest of my parliamentary and ministerial team, let me say a few words. I'd like to thank now directly our Deputy Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. Elbow for a Rabbitohs supporter. You got a lot of support up here in Broncos land. I thank you, Elbow, for your courage, your loyalty, your remarkable humour, and your determination always to fight, fight and fight. I'd also like tonight to thank our Senate leader, Penny Wong, for her strength. Well, rarely, Penny, do South Australians get that welcome up here. So. Mind you, I'm married to one. I thank you, Penny, for your strength, your common sense and your friendship, just as I thank your Deputy Jacinta Collins for hers. To the Cabinet, the Ministers and the Parliamentary Secretaries, I value your energy, your fighting spirit and your dedication, and that of all your staff who have been out there supporting us all the way through. To our branch members, our campaign workers and our volunteers, I thank you, the army of true believers. I thank too our affiliated unions across the nation for your solidarity with Labor's cause and for your formidable work in the field. You too are the heart and soul of our Labor movement. You too are part of the army of true believers. To my Prime Ministerial staff, what a fantastic team. Bruce Hawker is here somewhere, a person who has worked on 40 Labor campaigns over the years, is a campaign veteran. Give him a round of applause. Patrick Gorman, who has been with me. And for a sand groper from West Australia, has settled into Queensland remarkably well. Patrick, you've been with me for so long. I thank you for your loyalty, your sense of humour. Jessica Bukowski for managing my world. She's a Queenslander, by the way. Fiona Sugden, my press secretary, who came back from her previous work with me as Prime Minister to join this cause of the last couple of months. Fiona, we love you. 3 kids under 3 or 4. How does she do it with a baby of 6 or 7 months? Wonder Woman, that's what I say. And also, of course, Corrie McKenzie, who is here as my Deputy Chief of Staff. Jim Murphy, my Chief of Staff. The rest of my media team, Matthew Franklin, Eamon Fitzpatrick and Maggie Lloyd, all the other fantastic members of my staff, I love you all. And for putting up with me. I really do thank you for that. Finally, I'd like to thank also our National Secretary, George Wright, and his incredible staff of 150 workers at campaign headquarters down there in Melbourne for all the work you have done. Thank you, team. My wonderful electoral staff led by Katrina Hicks. Put your hand up, Katrina. And the whole electoral team, including my longest-serving staff member, Fleur Foster, out there in force today. You are a team of champions. Malcolm McMillan, the President of our FEC, Les Henning, its Treasurer, all of our branch members in the Griffith FEC, you are marvels. And finally, to each and every member of my family here. They are my life, my hope, my encouragement, my support, and without them, I could have done none of this. With them, it has been possible. To Rays and Marcus, to Nicholas and Zara, I love you all. Jessica and Albert were with us until only half an hour ago. Our bub, our granddaughter Josie, has come down with a fever. They're now off at the local hospital. That's life on the campaign. She would be here in spirit as 14 months old, the youngest young Labor member ever. Friends, you've had a hard day. So let's bring this to a close when I say that throughout our history, we, the Labor Party, have been a party of hard heads and soft hearts. That is the genius of Labor, always attending to the tough questions of the economy and national security, through war and through peace, through depression and recession, but never allowing our hearts to harden to those of our Australian family who are the most vulnerable. It is this combination which is the unique legacy of Labor. This is a great movement, and I salute the movement for its strength, its vitality and its future. I have been honoured to serve as your Prime Minister and as your party's leader. But there comes a time when you know you've given it your all, and a time for the party to further renew its leadership for the future. For me, that time is now. So I will not be recontesting the leadership of the Parliamentary Labor Party. The Australian people, I believe, deserve a fresh start with our leadership. I know this will not be welcome news to some of you, but my responsibility has been to maintain Labor as a fighting force for the future so that we can unite behind the next leader of our party. I have taken this decision with a heavy heart because I love this party, I love the movement, I love the values for which we stand, I love the vision we have for Australia's future, and I love the hard work of translating that into policies that make our future. Disability care, Medicare, Denticare, the future, better schools, better hospitals. That's us, we do those things. But the time has come for renewal. We've begun the process of party reform, including the process new formed for the election of the leader, so that in the future our leaders will be elected by a combination of 50% of you, the entire branch membership of our party, and 50% from the parliamentary members. This is the beginning of the democratisation of our party. And I say this to party members right across this vast land of ours, Australia. In the future, we must continue our party's reform, modernisation and democratisation to be the broad church we need to be to fully embrace our future. Let me put it in these terms. We at our best are the party of the little guy. By which I mean this. If you're a person out there who has a disability and you cannot work, then we support you. If you're a person out there who can't find a job, we support you. We support you to find a new job. If you're a person out there in work, we support you having decent work with decent pay and decent conditions. And if you're a little person out there, a young person, someone starting out, the little guy, who decides to branch out and form their own small business and turn it into a medium business and a big business, we're for you as well. We are the party of the little guy. Because it's from the little guys, the forgotten people of Australia, sometimes, that our nation's strength is built for the future. So, friends, you won't hear my voice in public affairs of the nation for some time. That is as it should be. So to you, the Australian people, I thank you, one and all, for this opportunity to serve as your 26th Prime Minister of this nation, Australia, one of the greatest countries in the world. I thank you all.
Well, there are some interesting things to observe out of that concession speech by Kevin Rudd. Several things. First of all, I guess that he may yet be a little bit optimistic in declaring that there is no loss of seats in Queensland to Labor. There are 2 seats still in doubt, the seat of Capricornia and the seat of Petrie.